The first time you went to Scotland, what did you expect in terms of the country and distilleries?
I just expected it would be a nice tour. I didn't expect to like Scotch. You know, when you had called me about working the first time, you and I had known each other for, at that point, 25 years, and I'd worked for you before, and so you talked to me about going to Scotland and said, do you like Scotch? And I said, not at all. And you immediately said, you've never had any good Scotch. And so...
That was pretty crass of me, actually.
You tend to be blunt like that. And I thought, all right, he taught me to be a wine snob. He can teach me to be a Scotch snob. So I go over there, and long story short, I now have a collection of about anywhere from 30 to, don't tell my wife this, 30 to 40 different single malts. It's exceptional, it's extraordinary. And what that says to me very clearly is that the main reason a lot of people don't buy single malts is because they really don't know anything about them. They're like me. You know, they drink vodka and some rum and maybe some bourbon, but they don't know enough to really appreciate the uniqueness of a single malt and the complexity of the flavors and the subtleties and how different it can be from one day to the next. It's just such an exceptional spirit, and because people don't know anything about it, they find it unapproachable. And I think more than anything else, the Malt Project is a series that makes people aware of how unique and different and exciting Scotch whiskies are. And once you know that, you can't stay away from it. I mean, once you have a kernel of knowledge, you want more and you want more and you want more. And this series is just ideal for getting people excited about malts and giving them an idea of what the breadth and range of different tastes are, and you know, can really get somebody into the world of whiskey.
I know that people ask me, what's your favorite malt? What do you tell them? Or do they ever ask you that?
People ask me that all the time, and I say I can maybe narrow it down to 10. And who was it who said that my favorite malt is the one that's in my hand?
Yeah.
I think that's very accurate. We went to a grain distillery and saw them make vodka in 3 days. From the truck bringing the grain to vodka that they could put in a bottle and sell at a grocery store or wherever, 3 days. And I compare that to Scotch whiskey, which by law has to be a minimum of 3 years old, and most of the time what you buy in a single malt is 10, 12, 14 years old. It's been aged in a barrel in a warehouse in Scotland, and you start thinking about what's the complexity of a drink like that as compared to a spirit that you can make in 3 days. I mean, it starts to give you an idea of how special this spirit is.
Okay, which kind of leads you into an interesting comparative question. Number one, how would you compare the price of quality wines to a quality single malt, and why is a single malt expensive? And which always leads to the third round of what happens to that $50 or $75 wine?
Yeah, I mean, people are not happy, but people will frequently spend $40, $50, $60 on a bottle of wine and consume it in one meal. You spend $40, $50, $60 on a single malt, and it's with you for weeks, usually. There are exceptions, but usually for weeks. And you know, you get so much more enjoyment, to me, out of a good bottle of single malt as opposed to a nice bottle of wine. And maybe that's just me, but I think most single malt lovers would agree that it seems expensive, but it's really a value when you consider that you're not really most of the time drinking much at a sitting, and you know, you have a couple of wee drams and you're quite happy.
You've been with us on 3 trips to Scotland. you've been to a lot of distilleries. What are some of the exciting moments that stick out as either exciting, fantastic, catastrophic, whatever?
Well, I think about this, and I've talked about this, that so much of what we do is, and I try and be conscious of this while we're shooting in all these extraordinary places, and I think there's no way anybody else gets to do this. You know, we're in a warehouse, a 100-year-old warehouse with Jim McEwen, talking about new spirit, and we're talking about 5-year-olds, and we're sampling 5-year-olds out of the barrel, and he's talking about this new expression, and you're in this dark, musty warehouse in Scotland, and it's just such an exceptional experience. And what we try and do on the Malt Project is to capture that as best we can, capture the atmosphere, capture the mood, capture the enthusiasm of a master blender, and convey that to the person at home so that they can kind of experience what we get to experience every time we go shoot. You know, being with Eddie McGaffer in the Bowmore warehouse, and he's talking about, well, you know, the seawater is actually up to here on the wall. Another one of those old warehouses. This one's right on Loch and Dal. And he says the seawater's right up here, and he says, of course, you get this, the seawater is leaking into the warehouse, and you know that's got to impact the taste of.
And we're looking at it
of the Bowmore Spirit. Yeah, we're looking at the water on the floor, and you know there's just so many of those. And so, a lot of the tastings that we've gotten to go to. There was an exceptional one with Bill Lumsden where he talks about the impact of wood on the flavor of whiskey. You know, what kind, are you using a first fill oak? Are you using a sherry? Are you using a port? And how can that impact the taste of the end product? I would say that in every volume, there's at least 10 or 12 exceptional scenes that one of those scenes alone would be worth buying the volume, because they're just moments that nobody else, you'll never get to experience them in your life except through the Malt Project. I think the Malt Project, you know, to give you, the producer, Jack Oswald, credit you deserve, is it's an effort done out of love for single malt. I mean, you haven't made money on this, but you did it because you love Scotland and you love single malts, and you've also, you know, come to love the people involved in the project. And I think that comes through in this series, and people who look at this series will come away kind of feeling some of the same passion that you feel, and feeling an affiliation with a lot of these people who have become your friends. I think the Malt Project is an exceptional effort which involves hundreds and hundreds of hours from some very gifted filmmakers. And you know, I think it's a must-see for anybody who is into spirits in any kind of a serious way.